So, what is your origin story and what originally got you into fighting?
So there's kind of two reasons, I guess, why I started fighting. I started Thai boxing when I was 10 years old. And then again, two reasons. One was just to do some sort of activity, I think, with people my own age. I just kind of finished with football training or soccer training, and there was wanted somewhere else. Or my mum wanted somewhere else for us to join, some kind of club. And the second was the self defense aspect of training Thai boxing. We were kind of 10 years old at the time, and there were bigger kids who lived in the area, and I don't think my mum wanted us to be bullied by them.
Mhm. I know you started in Thai boxing, but what would you say is your favorite martial art?
That's a tough one, and that kind of constantly changes. I think that's the kind of the good thing about MMA, because there's so many individual aspects to it with the grappling and the wrestling and the striking. Maybe if you're not feeling the striking part, you can enjoy the grappling part instead. But probably at the moment, I'm enjoying. I'd say possibly the wrestling part, especially cage wall work, the wrestling on the
Mhm.
wall, the wrestling off the wall, the defense, the offense. That's what's I'm really trying to work on at the moment.
Mhm. How's the environment at Next Gen since you guys have been like lifted up on a pedestal?
Yeah, we kind of we got quite a lot of momentum behind us at the moment, and that's obviously with Molly and Paddy doing so well in the UFC internationally, and we've got a few top lads who are kind of working their way up through the UFC through the Cage Warriors organisation, and even domestically, we've got some lads who are just starting the pro careers or are quite deep in their amateur careers, doing really well. So the atmosphere is great. Like I say, it's kind of Molly and Paddy were leading the way for the rest of us and shining a light on next gen. But as you as you mentioned, the atmosphere is great at the moment.
Mhm. How's it like training with them?
Yeah, it's a funny one. It's not. And Paul Rimmer, the head coach, sat us down one time and said about, just about what I'm going to say now. It's when you're in the gym with Paddy and Molly, you're not training with superstars. You're just training with two other people who are just doing what you're doing. They're getting coached by the same people. They're putting in just as much work as you are. All very down to earth. Again, none of them are very entitled or go around with their noses in the air or anything like that. They're just two people trying to do better and trying to work their way towards whatever goal they've got. But yeah, there's certainly not any no egos or anything like that. They're very down to earth people, I think, for the most part.
That's awesome. Where do you see yourself in the next couple of years?
I think again, I've got kind of two goals, and one's a relatively short-term goal, and then there's the long-term goal as well. Short-term goal being winning the Cage Warriors welterweight title.
Mhm.
I've dropped down a weight class after being the middleweight champion, and welterweight, whether I lost to Milan, I lost my title to Milan, and but even if I was going to win against Milan, the idea was to drop down to welterweight. So I am in the process of doing that. I've had two decent wins, although they both kind of been at 80 kilo catch weight, which is not what I expected. I did want to fight a welterweight, but the next fight will definitely be at 77 kilo. So the short term goal is to win the world title, the Cage Warriors world title at the welterweight weight class, and then hopefully after that, I think hopefully the long term goal being UFC, get that UFC contract.
Mhm.
I'm not sure what else I'd have to do as a fighter to get into the UFC bar. Win the welterweight title. I've won the middleweight one, and I kind of think the welterweight one would be that cherry on top, which would push me forward into the UFC.
Mhm. What started you to use more of grappling in fights? Because you look pretty good on the stand up, but lately you've been finishing fights by submission.
Yeah, that's something that kind of next gen again are very good at is what we do in next gen is we look for the high percentage submissions, which is essentially the rear naked choke.
Mhm.
The UFC Performance Institute came out with like a lot of statistics about 6 months ago, and I think the rear naked choke or a submission from back, from the back mount or from whatever turtle, by far the most successful submission was the rear naked choke. So it makes sense to put a lot of your effort into the high percentage subs, whereas something like an arm bar or something like that, or even some kind of shoulder lock is relatively low percentage. So we do drill rear naked chokes an awful lot, and you can kind of almost build a system around that. You can
Mhm.
strike into a clinch, into a body lock, take somebody down, and get into a position where you can get someone in a rear naked choke really quite quickly and quite simply. So yeah, it makes sense to kind of put a lot of eggs into the high percentage basket, and maybe not so much into the submissions that, if someone sweats in an MMA fight, it's very hard to grab hold of an arm bar or to keep someone in even a guillotine or a triangle, but it's very easy to grab someone's neck and keep a good grip of that. So it does make sense. We've got Nathan Fletch, we've got Paddy, we've got loads of guys in the gym who have exceptional rear naked chokes, and that is something that we drill an awful lot.
It's actually pretty smart. Never really, I didn't even know that they released statistics.
Yeah, so kind of in general, like a submission from guard, for instance. So if I'm on my back and you're in my guard, the success rate in terms of submissions from a hole was something like 4%. Where in terms of taking a back mount, I think it was like 40. So all submissions from any kind of area, it was 43% was from the back mount position. So that's a huge, a huge percentage. And like I say, the reason being, it's quite easy to get into that position. It's hard to defend the position, and the sweat and the blood doesn't really make too much of a difference with getting that choking arm under the neck.
Mm-hmm. My next question is, your tattoos are quite a work of art. I really like the colors. What do they mean to you?
So that's like Japanese art. In fact, I've got a lot more since even from the last fight. I've got it's called a Fudamayo on my belly going up to my chest. So I've got the two sleeves and I've got this big tattoo which joins everything together. So I've got a dragon on one arm, I've got a tiger on the other. In terms of kind of the main thing being, I just enjoy looking at the art, and that's the big thing. I'm not Japanese. I don't have any kind of Japanese ancestors or anything like that. I don't pretend to be a Japanese or a samurai or anything like that. The main thing is I really enjoy the artwork, and the dragon and the tiger generally there for like bravery and courage and good luck and whatnot. The Fudamayo that I've just got on my belly, his stands for immovable. So that's like the way I see it, it's I'm gonna, I'm immovable. I'm not gonna take a step backwards. I'm gonna be in your face the whole time. I'm gonna be tough, and I'm not gonna be bullied by anyone. This is kind of why I've got this this Fudamayo on my belly. And the Fudamayo is like a Buddhist god. He's like the scary Buddhist god that all the Oni or the demons are scared of. So I think that the new one I've got that has the most kind of symbolism. But yeah, the Japanese tattoos are, I really enjoy getting them, and I'm lucky enough to have a fantastic tattoo artist, Danny Rossetier in Manchester, and so yeah, and it makes me stand out a little bit. I'm not just another, white bald English lad. Hopefully, it gives someone else or some other people something else to look at while I'm punching my opponent in the face.
Yeah, it definitely does. What's the mindset going into the fight? Is it just a job to do, or is it like you want to knock his head off?
Kind of both. The mentality that I've got is I don't want to go in there to hurt anyone, but I'm willing to hurt people to win. I don't go in there with the mentality of I want to hurt this guy or I want to kill this guy. I want to do damage. The overall game plan is just go in there and win the fight as efficiently as possible. Which again is why the rear naked chokes and whatnot come into it. But yeah, I do. I'm 20 fights into my pro career now, so it is. I do kind of see it almost. I try and be very professional, very business-like in terms of, again, I'm just going in there. I'm not getting emotional. I'm not getting too riled up. I've got a job to do. I'm going to go in there and do it as best I can. Try not to get injured, and try and get a finish. I think that's important these days. Again, especially if you're trying to make the jump to the UFC, you want to get a finish. I'm not a fighter maybe who's going to be knocking people out, but I can do damage. And like I say, I've got some exciting submissions with these rear naked chokes with the no hooks and things that that kind of can go viral, I suppose. So the idea is go in there, win the fight, and hopefully do it in as exciting fashion as I can.
How exactly do you get into the UFC? Do you have to have a connection, or do they reach out to you?
Well, I've got a manager. I'm managed under Intensity, and they've got a fantastic relationship with the UFC. The way kind of Cage Warriors are positioned at the moment, that's the main kind of step over to the UFC. Graham Bunn, that's a great relationship with Sean Shelby and Dana White and the UFC brass. They've got a really great relationship, and then of course that's been fortified with how well Paddy's done as well. So yeah, I've got a great manager. Cage Warriors are very well positioned. They're the top tier organization in Europe at the moment. So if you're winning the world titles out of Cage Warriors, it does put you on the UFC's radar.
Yeah. What's most satisfying to you? A knockout, a hard-earned decision, or a submission win?
I think I'd like to get a knockout because I've never had a knockout. I've had, a lot of TKOs where I've, kind of dropped my opponent or staggered them, and then the referee's jumped in. But I've never had like a stone cold knockout. So I'd kind of like to add that to my repertoire. But a submission again, I've had, I think it's like three out of three of them. My last wins have all been rear naked chokes. I think it was Frederick, Hugo Pereira, and Joel, the last one. So another rear naked choke would be nice as well. That's something that
Mhm.
seems to be something that I keep pulling off, and something that I seem to be quite proficient at. So another rear naked choke I'd be happy with that. But overall, I would quite like a knockout, like a proper stone cold
Mhm.
walk away knockout. That'd be nice.
Who's your favorite UFC fighter besides Patty or Molly?
It's a tough one, this, because I used to be, when I got in the sport really because of Michael Bisping, and that was because he was the only UK fighter and he gave everyone a pathway to get to UFC. But I would say now it's probably Glover Teixeira or Jan. I like Jan.
Peter Yan?
I kind of like the older guys. I like the old dogs in the game, to be fair, because they give me a little bit of inspiration that I can have another 10 years on my career. 5 years ago, even 10 years ago, there was no mid-30s. Not instead of kind of like Randy Couture or something. It was a young man's game, and now because the nutrition's so good and the training's more sensible, we're seeing older guys who are, Glover won a world title at 42 years old. So I'd say he's my favorite just because he's inspirational. And you think, listen, I'm 32 this year, but if I look after myself and I stay relatively injury free, maybe I've got another 10 years in me. Who knows?
Mhm. Who do you look up to?
Um, I quite look up to my twin brother. Actually, I've got a twin brother, Daniel Bonner, and he's a very high level Thai boxer. He's fifth in the world at his weight class. This Saturday's fighting for WEC international title. And so I would say, him, he's shown a lot of kind of mental strength. We've both had our ups and downs, and Dan will say the same as me. None of us are natural athletes, really. There's nothing talented about us, and nothing that really stands out. But what we have been is extremely consistent and persistent. We've gone through our dark times and injuries and whatnot. I mean, Dan, for instance, Dan came into MMA, briefly in his first MMA amateur fight. He broke his jaw in two pieces. Had to have quite a bit of surgery to get his jaw back together, and didn't bother him, never phased him, never whinged once about it, and just went on his way, healed his jaw, and went on to fight. And he's been extremely successful in Thai boxing. He's a European champion. He'll hopefully win this WBC title, international title on Saturday, and then there's a lot of world titles and whatnot waiting for him. So yeah, I'd say I probably
Mhm.
look up to Dan the most out of everybody.
That's amazing. Okay, my last question for you is, what do you think is harder, fighting a veteran who's been through it all, or a new guy who has like a interesting style?
I would say probably the new guy with the interesting style. I think I've said to people before, it's MMA. It's a very dynamic sport. In terms of, if you look at most boxers, generally for the most part, most boxers have the same kind of boxing shape. They have, one leg forward. They have the power hand. They don't really switch stances. They're very kind of uniform. It's very very traditional stance. Thai boxers are very similar. Where MMA, especially new guys, they're all over the place. They're switching stances. They're throwing shots and kicks and whatnot from here, there, and everywhere. These are very difficult styles to match up against. Guys were throwing flying knees or come out with kind of funky submission skills and stuff. So the new guys, they're a little bit more freestyle than the old veterans. And these new guys, they didn't start in boxing or Thai boxing or jiu-jitsu. They just start in MMA. In
Yeah.
my day, there wasn't really MMA classes. You had a jiu-jitsu gym and you had a striking gym, and then hopefully you could, kind of find a way to get to both of them. Where these guys, they've not got that traditional base, so it just makes them a little bit more unorthodox and tricky to deal with. So veterans, they have their own thing. They're super tough and they're experienced, and that comes with problems. But the new guys coming up, especially with the strange styles, they're really tricky to come up against.
Yeah, it's very true. I noticed that too, how back then you would have to go to jiu-jitsu, you have to go to Muay Thai, but now it's like MMA altogether. It's
That's
gonna
it. I mean,
be
when I first started, I was 17 years old, and I lived in Wales. And Wales it connects to England. It's on the left to England. It's about 50. about 50 miles away from England or so, depending on obviously where you are. I lived in the North of Wales. Now, when I moved to the North of Wales and wanted to start MMA, there wasn't any MMA gyms in the North of Wales. It just wasn't there at the time. So we had to get a car, go through our driving lessons, and drive a 100-mile round trip just to get to a gym. And
Wow.
that was only probably about 12, 13 years ago. But now, obviously, with the way that the UFC's grown, there's gyms everywhere. There's just jiu-jitsu gyms everywhere. And UFC hasn't just grown MMA gyms. It's grown the Brazilian jiu-jitsu gyms and the wrestling gyms and the striking gyms. Everything has benefited from the growth of MMA and UFC as a whole. So the guys coming up these days do have an easier time of it by far. There wasn't strength and conditioning coaches and nutritionists back in when I first started. It wasn't a thing, and that now obviously they're everywhere. I've got an S&C coach and a nutrition coach and stuff, and it's important to keep up with this and stay on top of the game. But when I was 17 or early 20s, this stuff just didn't exist.
Mhm. Yeah, it's very true. Well,
Mm.
thank you very much. That's all I have for you today. Thank you for coming on.
Pleasure.